Okay.
Okay, so in terms of a two-way reception model that we're familiar with, what do you see Black Orpheus adding to a classicist understanding of the myth? And what does an understanding of the classical myth bring to Camus' film?
Okay, so Justine has asked about a two-way model of reception. What what might classicists gain from the Camus film, and what might the modern context gain from the classics? Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things I guess another way of thinking about this is the question of does context matter? Does the reception context matter? Do the particulars matter? Is another way of thinking of it, right? Um, Someone once asked me after viewing this film if this isn't just a kind of one-to-one transport of the classical story onto this new context it's grafted on, and then so what, right? So you get the Orpheus story, the underworld scene, the end of the story, his death. It's the same story no matter what. Do the particulars matter? I think one thing that always strikes me about the Camus film is that it highlights a feature of the classical context that I don't think I see anywhere else. So, for example, Cocteau wants to see Orpheus in terms of a kind of Freudian model. He thinks about the mirror stage and the idea of death, the loss of attachment, um, and all of these sorts of things. I think that that's something you get from the Camus film and from the Brazilian context generally, especially bossa nova, is the idea of elegy. So Carnival is really elegiac. It's about how momentary life is, how fleeting love is, how fleeting joy is. And elegy, if you go to people like David Halperin and his definition of pastoral, which is in a way an elegiac genre, the pastoral elegy is about the moment of joy right at the moment of death, the heroic moment where you're about to accomplish this wonderful thing, or you have this wonderful feeling, the rose is in full bloom, and at that very moment it's going to die. And I think that aspect of the myth is something that bossa nova and the carnival context really, really gets. So in a way, you regain something that in the third century, for example, with the Phanocles is one of the Hellenistic poets who handles the Orpheus story, and these are elegies. The pastoral context, you lose that, I think, in a lot of the other adaptations. The Brazilian adaptation, in a way, restores that aspect of the myth. You look like you're about to ask something or follow up.
No, no, I was just agreeing that a lot of them become very staid. A lot of the receptions become very staid, and this actually puts some of the sort of the life and the feeling into it rather than just a plain rendition.
So Justine is saying that a lot of the adaptations or receptions become staid, and that the Camus film adds some life, gives some life to this sort of adaptation. Um, the other thing I think that's in a way independent of classics, but not entirely independent of classics, is the question of what the Brazilian is trying to get at. And again, I mean, far be it for me to speak for the Brazilian or for Brazilian society, but in a way, one has to ask why a story like Orpheus is presented in a play, redone in a movie in '59. It wasn't enough to leave the movie alone. Camus has to redo it in 1999. What are we getting at here? I think in a way, the Brazilian artist is trying to talk about a number of things. Number one, allergy, but the Brazilian artist is also talking about, to a certain extent, the role of race in Brazilian society. Who is Black Orpheus? There's a book called Black Orpheus by political scientist Michael Hankert, which is interested in the question of whether or not black identity or a kind of cultural and ethnic identity can bring liberation to the poor people living in the favelas, many of whom are black in Brazil. Is cultural identity a way forward? Is cultural identity a way toward liberation? This is a cultural identity that, in a lot of ways, has been repressed throughout the 20th century in Brazil, and yet here you have this black, again, this Black Orpheus. Um, so I mean, reception is always kind of, yes, two-way street. You're gaining a lot in the reception context about the original. You're learning, casting different light, new light on the original, and therefore seeing it in a different way, seeing different nuances about it. But also, I think the classics have always been a way for us to address eternal problems and local problems within a society. So, I mean, the idea of Black Orpheus starts with Sartre. Why is Sartre interested? Why does he want to cast negritude poetry as the poetry of Black Orpheus? Why is the negritude poet Black Orpheus? I mean, that in and of itself is a problem, but the attempt must get at something. And I see you looking to say something. So,
No,
so
just the
Justine is freezing. Are you there?
uh, yes, I'm still there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go for it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so even though Sartre used Black Orpheus to preface this book of negritude of black identity free of national boundaries, it was Mudumbe, the Valentine Mudumbe, who says instead of giving it a cloak, he gave it a shroud, and he kind of killed the idea of negritude at the
Wow.
same time.
Yes. So Justine says that Valentin Mudembe says that rather than giving a cloak to the collection of negritude poetry, I think it's 1948, that Sartre gave it a shroud. So he kills the idea with this model of Black Orpheus. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're right. No, but it's a brilliant point. It's an important point. And you might think of this too as, or in terms of Soyinka's question, why Black Orpheus? Why not Ogun?
Yeah,
Why not one of the African gods, right? Why not someone from a Yoruba pantheon? Why Black Orpheus? And in a way, Camus is probably not consciously, Morais probably more so, is in a way getting at that, right? You know, is Black Orpheus an indigenous model? Is he black? Is he Afro descent? And what does that underworld scene really get at? This encounter with Afro descent practices. How comfortable, how uncomfortable is the
yeah,
Orpheus character with that? There's a lot there. Um, and again, classics provides a kind of frame, a kind of model, a kind of distillation of broader cultural problems that
yeah,
that can't be let go. I mean, Jiegus and others might complain about it, but they can't get away from it.
yeah, yeah. They keep returning.
They keep returning to it. So good. Okay.